Welcome to Athena's Rapid Fire Takes on Ethics and Compliance Issues. I'm delighted today to have as our guest Kimyatta Holder. Kimyatta is the Deputy General Counsel, Chief Compliance and Privacy Officer at Modern Health, a provider of workplace mental health benefits. Kimyatta's current areas of responsibility include compliance, regulatory, privacy, product, consumer protection, and other risk management. Kimyatta, you're one busy person. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Let's talk about how to handle multiple complicated regulatory topics with a small, lean team, such as the one you have. That can seem like an overwhelming challenge for ethics and compliance professionals. So let's start with 3 rapid-fire responses to 3 statements. Yes, no, maybe. All right? Okay. The most important role for an E&C team in a highly regulated area like healthcare is in-depth expertise in all regulatory requirements.
I would say no. I think expertise is incredibly important, but being able to understand your business and navigate through business challenges and align that with goals is the real moneymaker in the skill set that's required.
Yeah, the heart of the matter, as it were. 2, scaling compliance alongside business growth and innovation is the best way to design an ethics and compliance program.
Absolutely, yes. Have to be flexible and be able to kind of analyze risk as you are taking in business goals and thinking about the best way to scale your compliance program to meet those.
Perfect. 3, incorporating ongoing human review into any technology, but in particular AI, is essential to good governance and effective risk mitigation.
Hot topic right now, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. That's a yes. Yep.
Yeah,
You've got to have human review.
Well, you can tell us more in the deep dive. So let's dive in.
Yeah.
First, let's talk about managing complicated regulatory requirements. How do you actually do that? And what's the best way to go about it?
Yeah, my philosophy with my team and here at Modern Health and at other places has really been, you need your foundational elements for a compliance program, but particularly in these spaces where there's fast innovation, business goals change, priorities change, you really need to have a risk-based program on some levels. You're not going to be able to tackle everything and kind of scorch earth every regulatory issue. And so being able to do appropriate risk assessments, understanding how they align with the business goals is really critical in being able to determine where to focus and where to prioritize as a team.
It also sounds like that's the best way to stay relevant to the business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to be a best business partner. That's right. That's right. And as an example that we have of that in particular is, kind of making sure you're part of the business strategy from the beginning. So kind of building in checkpoints and places in different workflows and cycles of work that ensures that there's a touch base with compliance, that you're really looking at the issues before they become an issue.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
And then how do you scale alongside business innovation?
Yeah, that is kind of goes to my point before. I think the best way to tackle is really to try to formalize a process where you're part of that innovation. Whether that be, in the product life cycle, having a process or protocol where, there's a particular touch base with legal and compliance along the product roadmap or the product build. Just really making sure that you have that seat at the table with your business partners to where they are being innovative, but also keeping you in the loop to make sure that you're being able to provide the most relevant guidance as they're thinking about that build.
And what about the role of good data in that partnership? Can you tell me a little bit about how you handle that?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of, when you're talking about using data to prioritize, to assess risk, you really have to have good, clean data. And so I think a lot of us sometimes are dealing with manual processes. And I think one of the interesting things about, this advent of AI is how we're eventually going to be able to turn a lot of that manual work into automatic processes. But in order for those automatic processes to work, right, you have to have the good data. So the whole kind of garbage in, garbage out framework that people talk about, really trying to avoid that being part of the automation that ultimately helps you scale and innovate. And so we really focus on trying to make sure we're pulling from the most accurate data, regularly auditing and taking a look at that data to make sure it makes sense with the alignment of goals. And as we think about all of the different ways we can use AI, it's just been even more motivating to ensure that that data is clean and is able to kind of give us the insights that we're needing to do our goal planning and risk analysis.
Well, let's talk about the AI's role
Of it all.
in
Yes.
dealing with the data tsunami, as a friend of mine calls it. Because
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
have all kinds of data, but as you say, some of it's garbage in, garbage out, and other
Yep.
isn't relevant to your business. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, from an AI perspective, I think just taking a step back in your organization and really developing some sort of protocol and policy for governance, right? I think in a lot of ways, we're having to look at use cases, in terms of the use cases, what data are we having to look at in order to do whatever it is we're trying to do. And so one of the ways we've really been focused on making sure that everyone is working from the same playbook is having those governance protocols in place around how data is used, how data is connected to certain systems. Do you need certain agreements related to particular data that may be connected to certain systems? So really being diligent about the use cases that we're focused on, the data that's involved, and then making sure that the entire company is working from the same playbook and how we're deploying AI tools.
That makes perfect sense. And
Hmm.
another aspect of your program that we talked about before is that you make it approachable, both for people in your company, but also patients. And that's something that's dear to my heart
Absolutely.
because just throwing complicated information at people generally doesn't work. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we are big on, every team has a role in compliance. Compliance is not, as you all know, is compliance is not just legal and compliance's responsibility, it's the whole company's
You
responsibility.
hope.
And so we it should definitely be. And part of that is making sure that, like I said, our business teams are looping us in and feeling like we're business partners to them. So on the internal side of the house, compliance should be front of mind for the entire team when we're talking about how we're delivering and our services and products. To the extent there's anything that comes up on our patient or provider side of the house, really being thoughtful about the policies and codes of conducts that were shared with our patients and our providers is also super important as well, so that we're all kind of working again from that same playbook. Same code of conduct is really what drives a lot of that approachability, and so people know what our principles are from the outset when they engage with us.
Well, clarity is always a good thing in the ethics and compliance area.
Absolutely. Absolutely, as much as you
As
can,
much as you
right?
can. There's never enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to joke about stealing the Staples Easy Button logo, but
Right,
we didn't
right.
commit copyright fraud or whatever it would have been. Well, Kimyata, it's
Yeah.
been a pleasure having you on the podcast, and I hope you'll come
Thank
back.
you so much for having me,
It's my
Susan.
pleasure,
Yeah.
and I hope you'll come back at some time in the future and let us know how it's going.
Absolutely, would love that.